Hey, everybody, and welcome to our panel on the future of the industry. This entire virtual show has been about looking forward and speculating on how the race enthusiast and performance industry is going to look in the future. Some of that is the immediate future. Obviously, everybody has been affected one way or another by the current pandemic and closures, layoffs, shutdown, that kind of thing. But it's also a talk of the true future of the industry, where we're going, what we anticipate seeing, and what we want to see. I have asked the auto community staff who's here with us, along with some special guests, to really think about what they want to see going forward. And I'm hoping that today's conversation can be a little bit of both aspirational and realistic, and where we meet in the middle. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Palmer, who is one of the content editors for the auto communities. Michael's been very instrumental in getting our two guest stars to participate with us. So I wanted to give him a chance to hand it off to them to introduce us. The editors will introduce themselves, and then we will kick this off. So Michael, kick it off. Tell us who you are, and then introduce our panel.
All right. Hey, everybody. I just want to say hello to all of you. I am a member of the Internet Brands Auto Group. What my job is in particular is that I, along with two other guys on this panel, we create the original content for 20 of the most successful forum and auto communities on the planet, actually. It's very exciting stuff. My two biggest sites that I work on are Ford Truck Enthusiast and Corvette Forum. So we made sure to have some GM and some Ford representation here on today's panel on the future of the automotive enthusiast, the future of the enthusiast communities. Anyway, so that's what I do. I'd like to, if everybody could just go through and introduce themselves. I'll just go down from my perspective here on the Zoom. Andreanna, you're next, followed by Todd, Jim, Pouria, and Tommy.
Perfect. Well, my name is Andreanna, Ditton, and if you guys have watched any of our other panels this week, unless this one kicks it off and we're the first, I am the content manager for the Internet Brands Auto Classifieds and the Internet Brands Auto Communities. So we represent a whole slew of enthusiasts for race and performance, as well as for like more traditional OEM brand enthusiasts. Basically what that means is that I have a whole bunch of people who are super into cars, who get to write about them, talk about them, get other people involved, and mostly I keep them in line. Well, actually that's not true. I just make sure they get paid. But I want to turn it over to our guests, first of all. Todd, you are in my corner, so I'm going to point to you. So please tell us who you are.
Yeah, thanks. Todd Hoevener. I work for Ford Motor Company. My current title is Director of Advanced Strategy and Planning. What the hell does that mean? That means a couple of things. One, I have the great task of fighting for capital to put new technology in our vehicles, and a lot of that is related to, of course, the enthusiast world. It gets into accessories and other things like that. And then also on the flip side is one of my tasks is I got fuel and emissions compliance for the globe. So so I constantly get to slap both sides of my face as I try to be diligent in the emission standards and fuel economy, and then still try to go have fun. So that's me.
Excellent.
Cool. We also have Jim. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jim Smith. I'm the outside sales and support representative for Guaranty Chevrolet. My role is I also handle Chevrolet Performance's marketing and sales on that end. If anyone's been to the races in Southern California, you've probably seen our trailer out there. We're the largest GM parts and performance dealer in California and in most of the Western United States. So that's kind of my role.
And Jim is also famous, everybody. If you've ever watched Overhauling with Chip Fuse, you've probably seen him delivering performance motors to other famous people and helping to build those cars. So I had to put that in.
Thank you.
All right. Pouria.
Hey, everybody. I'm Pouria. I am a curated content editor for the Automotive, Internet Brands Automotive Group. We work on the same forum sites as Michael mentioned, and we create slideshows as well as how-tos on the curated content side. So that's sort of my role along with Tommy.
Pouria, give us a little bit more background too. You have an interesting automotive background too, so which I will make everybody talk about this as we go, but let's not forget.
Yeah,
just a little.
So I actually studied automotive design, and I've actually worked with a couple of manufacturers as well, including FCA and Kia as an automotive exterior designer. So that's sort of my background, and then I got into journalism through Internet Brands, and haven't looked back. So I still dabble in design here and there, but I've been enjoying working for the Internet Brands Automotive Group websites for over 2 years now.
Excellent. All right, Tommy.
Hey, I'm Tommy. I am the senior managing editor of curated content. We do all those fun slideshows across a myriad of sites. I love cars, and I love things that push this industry forward in a really cool way. And I've been retweeted by Horatio Sands. So.
Excellent claim to fame. I also want to give a shout out before I turn it back over to Michael to our missing editor, Darren Richardson. Darren is moving currently. We hate to have left him out, but scheduling is as scheduling is, and we couldn't wait for him to be here. But we do miss him, and we know that he will have a lot to say about the future of the industry, and we will all be sort of putting our own perspective together with some articles and editorial on that going forward. So I really will stop talking unless it's my turn and turn it over to Michael.
All right, guys. I think that before we start talking about the future and the challenges that the automotive industry is going to be facing, I think it's a good idea to set the baseline for what things are like here in 2020, because the last decade in particular, even the last 20 years have been amazing from an enthusiast perspective. I will admit here that I am part of a multi-faith family. I own both Ford and GM products, and I love them all. And it's just an incredible time, that the standard Mustang GT has 460 horsepower. The standard Camaro and Corvette have 455. Well, I guess now the Corvette's up to 490 for the standard one. My apologies, you guys. But it's insane. Like 500 horsepower is the new 250, and then the special editions go crazy. They're up into the 700 and 800s with a factory warranty. Not to mention all the fun little kits and Roush superchargers and crate engines you can get from every company. It's an amazing time. So I just wanted to get your kind of sense of where Ford is right now. And what it's like to be a GM performance dealer here in 2020. Todd, I'll go to you first, I guess.
Well, I mean, we're Ford loves racing, so we're still clearly involved with it. If you haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari, and if that didn't put goosebumps on you, then at least for me, it was fun to watch. So our involvement with NASCAR and other endeavors, and of course we constantly keep the Mustang alive and purring, as it will. I think it's been a great time because there's still that want for the exhilarating feel of being sucked back in your feet or in your seat. And then, with the Bronco coming out, so we're looking at on and off-road performance. So it's not just, 0 to 60s and horsepower, it's torque. And can I have fun out in the wild? And so I think just the ability for people to get out, especially in COVID environment, to get out and go have fun and be a driving enthusiast, whether it's on or off road, is here to stay.
Excellent.
Jim?
Yeah. All right. So in kind of keeping with what Todd was saying, for me, doing the shows that we do, the NHRA Winter Nationals, the finals, that sort of thing, as far as the crowds are concerned, it took us quite a while to go from carbureted engines to fuel injection. Okay, so it took us a little while from going from a small block carbureted engine to an LS3 swap or an LT swap. We're seeing more and more of that today. It's getting stronger and stronger, and now we're reaching the next hurdle, EV vehicles, right? So obviously with the Ford Bronco, the new Hummer EV, we're seeing a shift, a big paradigm shift in how technology is being implemented. And what we're going to face, how do we symmetrically make this all work? So, we have profit at all levels and keep the enthusiasts interested, especially the older generations. It took them a while to adapt from carburation again to fuel injection. And now we're taking it from fuel injection into electric vehicles. So it's going to be a challenge, and I think we just take it a day at a time. And in a perfect world, I think if we found a balance between both, and if we got our youth involved, right? We want to get our youth involved at the beginning steps and part of programs that teach them that, this is the industry and you're our future, as leaders. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Well, if I can riff on that, and I think, people look at EVs as a compliance play. That's why we brought out the Mach-E, the Mustang, and to give that edge of the performance brand of a Mustang as well as the EV, to appeal to really a broader audience that's not just after the green tech and saving the environment. You can also then have the Mustang brand and the dynamics that come with it. So that's the play that we took to not make it just a compliance play.
Yeah, I'm also excited about the, it's still just a concept, but last year, the Connect and Cruise EV setup that GM is, I hope, going to offer, because the idea of being able to put, 400 horsepower in any car and then just plug it in overnight would make for a great daily commuter, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, 2 seasons ago, right? We ran the Copo Camaro, an all-electric Copo Camaro down the track at 8.5 seconds in the quarter mile. So that was kind of a little insight into where the industry is going, but keeping the performance as well.
Tommy, you're more into the Japanese motor car scene. What are you seeing in your communities in terms of its strengths and potential weaknesses right now, or changes?
In the import scene, it's a lot of headed towards I guess getting deeper into that hybrid sort of performance sector. I haven't really seen anyone try their hand yet at development of anything significant that's a full EV type setup, but a lot of them are like deepening their response with that dual petrol and electric system, just for like more of family type vehicles and not really performance. And I think that's where a lot of them are lacking, because there's a huge swath of the market that are waiting for these type of products that just aren't being fed anything substantial. And the performance cars that they are putting out, like the Supra, which is much maligned for its integration of BMW, and the hope that a lot of enthusiasts have in the new Z, which is reported to have some sort of hybrid setup possible. It's lacking right now, but a lot of people are hopeful because maybe there's some sort of...
We lost you, Tommy.
Oh no.
All right, we'll give him a second to redirect.
Well, that actually brings up, obviously, Todd, you can't speak to specifics, but what's the next round of big hurdles that, a global auto manufacturer is going to have to face, both here in the US, and I know that the emissions restrictions in Europe are even more strict. So what's next on the line for both new cars and for performance parts that we're going to need to evolve past?
Well, I think you said it. It's evolution. If you haven't driven a battery electric vehicle yet, holy crap! I mean, I drove our first F-Series BEV, and it's staggeringly exciting. Instantaneous performance. I had a Mach-E for last weekend. We're in pre-production, and I just want to go fast. And you find yourself on the freeway, stepping in the pedal. Next thing you know, you're going 100 miles an hour.
Whoa! Wait! Did you have the GT version?
Well, I didn't have the GT version, then you wonder. Then the GT version comes out. So I think it's an evolution. And I think, because I've worked overseas, and I remember trying to get Rangers into Brazil, and it was like, no, it's all displacement. It's all displacement. You got to have a V8. You got to have a V8. And we weren't going to put a V8 in. And, people, they talk numbers, but then they want displacement. EV is all about the numbers, and you've seen the numbers. And Jim was talking about it as well. It's just, you got these super high horsepower equivalent torquey vehicles coming that just don't have an internal combustion engine. So the enthusiast that wants to get behind a wheel of a vehicle that has that kind of performance, I think it's just an evolution. If you would like to shift, you're going to have to evolve. If you like to feel shifts, you're going to have to evolve. If you like to hear the sound, well, we can help you there, right? We can pipe in noise if that's what we need. So I think it's going to spur even more creativity and innovation in the aftermarket world once the EVs get more mainstream. That it is just what you said. It will be the evolution. Gotcha.
Well, actually, that brings up a debate that Pouria and I often have, which is I'm very, very excited for the all-electric F-150, Mach-E, anything. I've even thought about doing an EV swap on my 92 Buick Roadmaster just to have that instant torque and power. I think it would be, I'm all aboard. But there's one thing that we can't ever replace, I don't think, and that's that V8 sound, that engagement that the internal combustion engine brings. So I guess the question I'd like to give this to Pouria first, but Pouria, is there anything that would ever tempt you to go EV other than being forced to, in that sense, since you're such a fan of the kind of the 360 engagement that V8s, V10s, V12s really give us?
Right. So, I mean, you're right in that the sound of the motor has traditionally been a huge part of the experience of a sports car, of an enthusiast automobile. But I think it's about more than that. I think it's about the overall engagement, like you said, like the 360, like being able to engage and interact with your car in every way possible. And I think shifting gears is part of that. The clutch is part of that. The analog aspects of the automobile that we have today are all part of that. But to answer your question, I have absolutely no inhibitions about electric vehicles. In fact, I would love to have a Tesla, or even the new Hummer looks amazing. Because if you look at them as sources of transportation, they're perfect. They're efficient. They give you, like Todd was mentioning, that occasional jolt of instant torque, and you can have fun with them, of course, but I think we need to separate sort of the experience of driving from the efficiency of transportation. And I have absolutely no problem with electric vehicles being all over. Like a Mercedes E-Class doesn't need to have a V6 or a four-cylinder, right? It can be electric. Nobody's gonna miss the sound of the crappy hum that the engine makes. So I think there's
Corolla.
difference. Yeah, right. So it's just, for me, what it comes down to is, as far as preserving the authenticity of the internal combustion engine, it would just have to be in that small group of cars that are designed for the experience more than performance and more than the purpose of transportation.
Right. Well, in that case, I'd like to take a kind of a poll. I've been debating internally how long we're going to see V8 engines in new vehicle sales. Not necessarily in the aftermarket, and obviously cars that exist now are grandfathered in, but I'm that guy that has 3 V8s, including my Boss 302 Mustang, which, and by the way, I can't keep up with Teslas, but I certainly sound good losing. but so my guess is, I don't know, I'm guessing like maybe 15 years and no more V8s. What do you guys think, Andreanna?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at even like California. Excuse me, Todd was talking about emission standards that you're having to hone to, right? And California threw down, right? Like no more, and they're going to lead the way, as they should, right? I mean, we won't beat around the bush that I am all in favor of that type of emission standards. I am an enthusiast. I love the industry and I love that, but I also, firmly believe that we have no business continuing to, burn fossil fuels, and haven't for a really long time. And so I think that in terms of transportation, I don't think it's going to be much longer. I think that it's hard to sustain it. You see people, their lack of willingness to drive, right? And we're not talking about enthusiasts. We're not talking about people who love a vehicle. We're talking about like people who are just driving. And I think that even looking at the crossover, right? Like there's no reason that my crossover shouldn't have an electric engine in it, right? I love my crossover and I wish it went faster, but I don't need it to go much faster, right? I just need to beat the other soccer mom. Because I'm that competitive, right? So I think that we're going to see a move away from those for certainly passenger vehicles. And I think some of that comes from having stuff like the Mach-E, like the performance cars that are moving towards that, just to showcase it, right? And I think that you're right. I think 15 years is probably not a bad guess, but again, I don't make things, so I just write about them. So I don't want to. I don't want anyone to hold me to that, but I think that we're within the next 2 decades, we're going to see that shift. But again, from our professionals. And I'd like to circle back to this at some point to talk about the enthusiast and how we get young people invested in the industry if they are no longer seeing that on their day-to-day. So that's a end of the discussion question, but that's where I am.
Yeah, clearly I cannot reveal our internal plans, but
right.
But
we promise not to ask.
But the displacement has gone down, or the number of cylinders has gone down over time. V8s is less of a percent of the total mix of ICE engines. And then of course we're all working on the ICE to BEV transition, and states and governments are pushing that. But I think there will be a place with a V8 for a while on certain segments. I mean, we have a lot of trucks that have customers, not necessarily the enthusiasts, but they desire that V8 performance, because the BEVs aren't there yet. Because there's pros and cons of BEVs in big trucks, because they weigh a lot and it reduces payload. So as we look at that transition on both V8s for work and V8s for the enthusiast, I think they're going to be around for a little while longer. But the trends are clearly showing that, probably within the next few decades, 10 to 15, 20 years, I'm being very vague. It'll be then a tough business equation to keep them alive, because you got to go to SULEV 30 and 20. You got the emissions requirements. We're running out of physics of how to keep the emissions low enough to meet the regulations. So.
Pouria?
Oh, okay. So I just would like to quickly throw a counter out to what Andreanna was saying.
We argue about this a lot too.
So I think I personally believe, obviously industry insiders would have a better idea of what actually is going to happen, but I believe that internal combustion engines will continue to be engineered to match the emission standards if they need to be. And I definitely believe that there's going to be a place for the V8 in the future, albeit smaller, forced induction and hybrid, but a V8 nonetheless. Because I think to back up that point, historically, the automotive industry has followed racing, and specifically Formula One. And what we have in Formula One right now is the most high performance engines we have, and they're V6, 1.6 liter. They have a battery and they have turbos, and they make over 1,000 horsepower. So I think if we are able to eventually transition that into manufactured and production vehicles, I think there's a place for that, at least in my heart. And I think Todd is right. Of course, for the manufacturer, the primary objective is to create profitability, and if investing in more enthusiast-centered strategies is going to look like a bad investment, there's going to be some hesitation, obviously. So I guess the challenge there is for us to make that transition smoothly enough. And I'll agree with Andreanna in that crossovers, like I said, like most vehicles don't need to have internal combustion engines because it just makes things more complicated and you don't need the emissions. But I think eventually we'll have enough of a balance between electric and ICE so that, again, trucks and sports cars can still have that visceral feeling of driving a sports car, while all the other vehicles can just be vehicles.
Jim, what's your guess?
Well, as far as our target market goes, and the evolution of EV vehicles, there's that certain demographic that's out there still that wants to put a V8 engine in an old Chevy truck or in an old Ford truck, maybe the Coyote motor, right? So that whole plug and play stuff is pretty cool still. That's pretty much it. I mean, as far as new vehicle manufacturing, are we seeing a wave of EV stuff and are we at the forefront of it? Absolutely. Just like Todd said, that's not going away. That's going to be with us. The bigger question is, how do we make an EV vehicle sound like a V8, right? So any MagnaFlow people with us?
We'll ask them.
Yeah.
We will absolutely pose that to them.
I mean, that might be the answer, right? I don't really know, but I can surely tell you that, yeah, unequivocally, that there's nothing like the sound of a V8, as Michael was touching on earlier, right? And to try and find that balance, as I was stating earlier, if we can figure that out, God, world would be perfect, right? So, yeah, again, moving forward for Chevy Performance, for our naturally aspirated engines, supercharged motors, those sorts of things. Absolutely, we're hitting the resto mod shops, the muscle car shops, hot rod shops, you name it. That's our demographic, and that's what we're looking at to continue. As far as over time, we're probably, before the big leap to electric in those types of shops, we're probably at least 15 years out, I would say.
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't recall what the Copa Camaro sounds like. Please forgive me, but I have to say that the Mustang Mach-E 1440 and the Cobra Jet or 1400 and the Cobra Jet 1400, like, oh my, like those things sound wild, like Jetsons, but kind of more of a rock and roll version of it. Anyway, Tommy, what's your guess on the lifespan of new cars or trucks with V8s?
Ooh, I think for normal cars we may be seeing possibly 10 to 15 years, at shortest maybe 7 to 10, and that's just for those big barge V8 Luxo sedans. I see those going away pretty fast, but for pickups and for these vehicles that actually need that type of power, maybe 15 to 20. I think the people are going to find what they need to find for whatever vehicle they're searching for, and I really like how, as you were saying with the sound, Porsche's integrated their own sound for the Taycan, which is this weird kind of like Jetsons sort of bubbly sound as you accelerate, and what you had remarked about earlier with finding that sport, how they actually managed to put in a transmission into the Taycan so you can switch gears. Is really, really interesting. I mean, the price point is ridiculously high, it's Porsche, but I mean, it's really cool to see what they're doing with the tech that they've been given. But I do want to say the most exciting swap I've seen lately has been a LS into a BMW i8, which totally destroys the whole thing about it. But it's so cool because the car looks amazing, but the performance is so poor. It's just been so neutered because it's terrible. It's this tiny like 3-liter with a piss poor hybrid system on it. But it was like putting that LS engine in it, and you get the sound, and you get that more sports car, hypercar feeling from it that it should have had from the go. And it was like, oh, this is really cool. So I'm interested in not only seeing what people do in the future aftermarket with EVs, but also, you know, with taking EV cars and seeing where they can push them, and kind of that cross pollination that's going to happen with time, where people are left to their own devices, especially right now during the whole virus, and people are sitting at home, and you know, and it's kind of like, what can I do? So I'm interested in seeing what they do, and I'm also interested in seeing how the industry will pivot with, you know, emission standards and all of that stuff. As a enthusiast, it's equal parts curiosity as it is excitement.
Right.
So throw a tangent really quick. I'm really excited to see the first LS swap Tesla whenever that happens.
Well, Jim, speaking of LS swaps, since you're the master of them, what's the hot rod of the future look like to you? You know, forget everything that's like gotta happen, you know, timelines, anything like that. Like, you're given a blank slate. It's the future. V8s are maybe done. How are you building a hot rod, and what does it look like to you? Are you doing it with a classic vehicle like you've been doing? Or are you know, hopping up something new? Like, what's the sports car of the future from GM Performance or for your customer base?
Yeah, good question. I haven't really given that much thought, but there's something about an old iconic car, right? A vintage car to put new powertrain in. And whether it's, you know, an electric motor that's driving it, or whether it is an aspirated engine. But the way I see the future, everything's becoming more streamlined, aerodynamical. You know, it just looks quick while it's parked, that type of vehicle. And you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to say where it's all going to go. As far as the perfect vehicle, I want it to make noise if it's doing a 7-second quarter mile. That's just me. Okay, so, but yeah, I mean, you can't argue with the torque, the instant torque of an electric motor, you know, versus a combustible motor. So, yeah, I mean, I really don't know how to answer the question, but it's finding the balance between both.
Perfect. Pouria, a version of that question, but I mean, since you're a car designer, what is your dream car to design, you know, 10, 15 years in the future? You know, how is it set up? You know,
that's a tough question.
Do it right now. Draw it in front of us. Okay.
Honestly, there's been a lot of, the trend in the industry has recently been the ability to basically design whatever shape you want, due to the fact that there's no necessary, you know, allocated real estate for the engine and the transmission when you have an electric vehicle. So the package can be really anything. But I think that gets boring, because at some point you'll just end up designing rectangles. Or refrigerators. But I think there's going to be some sort of I guess a novelty in being able to continue to design sports cars in the classic sort of definition of it, you know, like long hood, just the classic proportions of a sports car. And unfortunately, I sort of reached a point in my design career where I realized, like, all the good stuff has already been designed, you know? So
don't give up, Pouria. You do it.
If you want to like design really cool rectangles, we can do that. but yeah, I think honestly, as far as the most beautiful cars that you can think of and that would be exciting to look at and design, you have to sort of give a nod to what's already been done.
Right.
So if the most exciting car for me to design in 10, 15 years or however long, it would probably be like a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, something like that, because, you know, I don't think there's going to be a commuter Ferrari or a commuter Lamborghini anytime soon. So
do
those
you
cars
see
are
things going like more retro in the future?
I I see that happening. I think, especially to sort of give you an insight of the minds of the designers that I interact with on a regular basis. I think a lot of what they want to see is more straightforward, more geometric designs and shapes, because we've over the 90s, the 2000s, and now the 2010s, we've sort of explored all these weird and fluid shapes and panels and designs. As you can see, like basically everything looks the same. Everything has that crease on the side from the Honda Accord to the BMW 5 Series, and so I think there's going to be a shift back into simplicity, and I can't think of anything better than 80s design. So I think
I can't. It was called the 1960s.
Tommy, your time has come.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Honestly,
you guys are gonna be Radfording all the way to the profit.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a tough question. I'm sorry if I sort of went on a few different tangents there. But yeah, I think the most exciting thing to design would be either completely reinventing the wheel or just giving a nod back to what has been successful.
Todd, I'll throw the question over to you as well. Obviously, you have to be vague as always. So let me phrase it this way. You know, I mean, look, I mean, you work for, we can't lean too hard into anything you say because, you know, you're not allowed to say anything, which we regret. Tell me all about the all-wheel drive Mustang. No, but so let's say you're like next year, you're at a pitch meeting with like the next big idea for either one of your current brands or a new brand idea. Like, what is your sports or performance car of the future, or truck or crossover or whatever? You know, what would you want to see?
Well, I mean, if it's on-road performance, and Pouria is right. I mean, we're always exploring new silhouette innovation, and sometimes it does go back in time to make it relevant now. I mean, we've seen that over and over again, and then you kind of get lost for a while, it seems, the industry, and then they kind of go back to it. You know, questions I would have, and it also gets down to aerodynamics, because people are still going to want range, potentially, I mean, in the future. But, you know, do the tires need to be exposed in the future?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, long hoods are cool because they have those beautiful proportions. And so what? There's no engines. That's now the trunk, and you know, we call it the frunk. It's where you put the space. So you could see a lot of opportunities, since you don't have a huge mechanical package. Which, by the way, we still have to meet crash. You know, and
Right.
and you have to. That's a lot of energy you have to manage with a big block of, you know, cast iron and aluminum, that in a crash event you have to manage. And if it's not up front anymore, I don't have to manage it anymore. So could you move, you get the heel point to the front center line of the tire. That proportion does that. Now you've got a lot of flexibility, where in the past we had to constrain our styling and the creative guys, because we had to dictate a certain crush space to handle that kind of load. So we talk a lot about heel point to front center line of tire as one of the key dimensions that could be dramatically changed over time. Do you do dramatic cab forward designs like in trucks? Because now, you know, you need cargo. So think of fleet or people really doing work, maximizes your space in the box. You can still put it in the garage, but you can imagine if you didn't have that big space up front, you move the cab forward. Now I got an 8-foot box, that a pickup box that fits in my garage. So I think the silhouette innovations are really cool right now because of the dynamic and the physics of the ICE engine and trans being gone. It's really, to me, an exciting time to walk into the studio and seeing what they're coming up with. Because it's not, you know, it's kind of like Jetsons, you know, it's kind of like a free reign again of, because some of the big tombstones that they've had to design around are not necessarily going to be there anymore. So I think it's it's going to be pretty interesting to say. My personal opinion doesn't reflect what Ford's view is, of course. There's my
Right.
big front. But
Ford confirms the return of the Fox body. Discuss.
and then of course off-road, you know, everybody needs visibility, and you know, the longer the hood, it's crappy for off-road. I can't see. I need to see outside. So, but with all the tech, with cameras, and you saw what Hummer just came out with and Land Rover had InvisiHood at one point. So, you know, there's a lot of tech that's even on the off-road will change those silhouettes as well, just for the same reasons. We don't have that mechanical package we have to deal with as much, but people want to carry stuff, so it may stay the same. So we're testing different silhouettes. It's always hard to predict because you got to predict in a product program, you know, 4 to 5 years out to make sure it resonates. So I think there's some examples in the industry now that are coming out that are going to test the bounds of the normalcy, especially on the truck side. With what Tesla. Yeah. Well, you know, so it's going to be, I think, very interesting times over the next 5 to 10 years.
Very cool. Andreanna, what does the future look like for you?
Hopefully one of those Broncos in my garage. The immediate future looks like to me. You know, I think that Bronco actually is an excellent example of that, because we waited so long for it to come back out, but it does such a good job. And I want to talk about it for a number of reasons, but I think that it is going to be reflective of sort of more immediate things, because it reflects the past, but it moves forward. I mean, I want to give GM a hard time, but it's not the, you know, it is a more successful revision of the past than I think anybody could have anticipated. And I think part of that is because it was smart about not only the shapes and the styling, but about how it approached it, right? Like it presented a lifestyle in a package. And I think even more than the shape of the vehicle in the future, it's that I think, much like everything, it's going to have to come with its own brand and its own lifestyle. Right. So I feel like I probably am not the best person to talk about the shape of it, because, you know, like the cars that I love and want to drive, I hope they don't change much. Right. The reason I love the reason I love the Miata is because it looks like an MG, but I can fit in it. The reason I want Jaguar to go back to what it used to look like. Right. I love the Mustang and I love the Charger and the Challenger. And again, it's because they recaptured that sort of glory of their heydays. I'm not much of an innovator when it comes to style and design. I like what I like, and I'm probably not going to be crazy about that. But I do love that we are looking at a vehicle as a lifestyle thing, right? And so one of the things that the Bronco did do was say, like, hey, here are a variety of lifestyles that you can lead with this vehicle. But also here's the things you can do. You can drive over a whole bunch of stuff, or you can just look like you might. You know, Jeep's been doing it forever, right? Like Jeep has been selling a lifestyle for a very long time, and we've bought into it, right? And not for a bad reason. I think that is going to be a huge part of the future of the vehicle, is that we want to think of it as something that represents what we're going to do and who we are, which is, you know, not much help for the race industry, the performance industry, but in terms of where I think it's going to go and what I want to see, that's part of it, right? Can I see myself in that? And do I want to? And have I been waiting for a very long time for it? Yes. So,
Tommy, how would you build your car of the future?
Wow. Probably very cyberpunk. Taking something old and doing something new and cool with it. I think my current fantasy is the old Ferrari 308 GTB, and then ripping it apart and just putting a Tesla motor and batteries into it, with some ridiculous coilovers, and just see what it can do, just push to its current limits of performance. As we all know, we love Ferrari for their racing heritage, but those engines are not made for daily driving at all. So yeah, that is just my thing. And I love that design is starting to go back to those, you know, like the Testarossa and the Countach and the old Aston Martin Vantage, those beautiful like wedge shaped long hood, really rakish designs, sharp corners. They're timeless in a way that it's old, but it still looks good. You know, it's the Fox body Mustang. It's the old Camaro, which I just saw one yesterday and I could not take my eyes off of it. It was an old IROC Camaro, and it was just like, yo, fresh coat of paint on it with that.
Oh no.
No, Tommy.
Not again.
We did mention that Tommy loves the 80s, right?
No kidding. Cyberpunk, the styling, is that Pouria? Is that a styling word? Cyberpunk?
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, it is. You know what's funny? The Tesla pickup truck was designed by one of my friends, and that was sort of his inspiration going into the project. He was looking at a lot of that stuff, as well as military aircraft, shapes and forms.
Interesting. All right, I think
have
Tommy is frozen, so Jim.
Yeah, no problem. I have a question I'd like to direct towards Todd, actually, and get Todd's input on this. In the very, very near future, we're going to definitely see the introduction of autonomous vehicles. And we're talking no steering wheels, no pedals, you just put your coordinates on a screen and you go. Right? No driver control, the thrill of driving, that's all going to disappear. Todd, where do you see Ford's balance on that as far as vehicle sales go? And how many autonomous vehicles versus non-autonomous vehicles are you guys? I know you can't put an exact number, but what is your balance and your thinking on that side?
You read my disclaimers up front, right?
Yeah, no.
Todd represents only himself.
To be clear, we did not ask that question.
Okay.
It doesn't work for us. We didn't ask the question.
Exactly.
Well, I'm just saying from both sides. Where do you
Totally.
see profitability and success for yourselves?
AVs are probably inevitable. It's just everybody's looking at when the technology will be capable, and you read a lot about where Tesla is, and everybody's working on it. It's a lot of expense, and it creates big GNORPs currently on vehicles with LiDAR and so forth. So, it's inevitable. I think it's going to take the transition for a while. I think, if you're a driving enthusiast, you won't get one. But if you're taking daily commutes, you'll leave your driving enthusiast vehicle in the garage, and then you'll take the daily commute, which you can do other stuff. So it is very freeing and relaxing, which is some key insights relative to as people spend time in their cars, they want to avoid potential for harm or whatever else. So I think there's a place for both. As far as sales, man, that's just too hard to predict. That's right. AV still a ways out, and that transition is going to take a while, just because there's so many older vehicles on the road.
Right.
You got to create a vehicle that can protect you from all that stuff. It's a great technical challenge to solve, but it like BEVs are inevitable.
That's a whole discussion in itself.
Yeah, is it inevitable? I mean, I don't want to get into a fight. Obviously, we are vehicle enthusiasts, but it's very hard for me, even as a vehicle enthusiast and somebody who has always lived somewhere where you had to have a car, right? To understand why we would put so much time and energy, aside from the we can do it factor, into that as opposed to expanding mass transportation.
Well, I mean, it can satisfy both, right? I mean, AVs can be mass transportation.
True.
You could call one up and then it shows up 2 minutes later, right? I mean, it's not the Uber model, but it could be like an Uber.
Yeah, that's true.
But the whole point, of course, of AV, just like driver assist features and everything coming in, is driven by the safety of the humans and in the vehicle and the pets, frankly. So there's a big desire to continue to further that. Insurance Institute for Highway Safety you know, it's a big stick. It says, you know, hey, we need to lower insurance rates and keep people safe. So you see in the big billboards all the time, how many deaths this year on the highways. And when I see those, I'm saying, yeah, I'm potentially part of that industry that's leading to that, right? So that's why I think it's somewhat inevitable, because I think society will want not only to have clean skies, but they're going to want to have safe driving conditions. And then how you die is your own fault, right? So, uh, but I think, you know, that's why I said it's inevitable. Now that means it could be many years out, right?
Of course,
And I
of course.
think the transition is going to be an interesting one where, you know, what was the iRobot? I think was Will Smith, right, where he had the AV vehicle, but then he went to auto, you know, his own manual mode. You know, do you have things like that so you can do it? I don't know, but that's going to be another time for another panel, I think.
Which
Yeah,
we
I
should
was about
have.
to say, based on the driving that I see here in Los Angeles, I am ready for many people to just sit in their car and be distracted without touching the wheel at the same time.
Yeah.
I would
The
like to
amount of
second that
phones,
for
like,
Texas.
I'm on board
I
with
would
that one.
definitely like to second that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. We're all on board.
There's the proof point right there.
Yeah, fair. Totally fair. Can I ask a
Yeah.
question really quickly before we run out of time too much? Because I want to circle back a little bit to the role of the enthusiast in the future of automobiles. We've talked extensively about electric vehicles, electric motors. But we also are all people who are dependent upon enthusiast interest to continue to be part of the industry right now, right? Like there is an inherent part of whether it's race enthusiasts, whether it's performance, whether it is putting their hands in something, whether it's how fast we go. And where do you see the people who want to have the hands-on experience? How do you see us supporting that, encouraging it? Jim, I know that was an interest of yours. It was like, how do we get younger people involved in the hot rod, in the hands-on element, and like how do we support the enthusiast audience across multiple spaces going forward, and how do we see that support evolving, right? And I guess I would like to see everybody talk about this, particularly our guests, but for all of us, because this is a big part of what we do and the people that we interact with.
Well, as far as youth are concerned, I mean, I don't know how many programs are out there today versus 10 years ago to get high school students involved in the trade of automotive. I'm guessing as the years go by, less and less people are becoming interested in that. And I almost feel like, you know, fathers need to take their sons to the races maybe for the first time. Maybe not when they're, you know, 14 or 15, but maybe, or their daughters, yes, or maybe when they're 7 or 8, right? And get them interested at a very young age. And maybe it is building that you know, old Mustang in the driveway with your son, right? That's a life experience that you'll never forget. Putting that Coyote motor in there, or you know, if it's an LS3 that you're, you know, shoving into an old Camaro. I mean, it's those things, those values, I think that we need to basically return to our kids. Our, you know, that's our future. And I think if we can keep that going, we'll continue to be successful at the performance level as far as resto mods and hot rods and muscle cars. So that's my take on it. I'm not sure, you know, I do recall going to SEMA for my first time, and it was mind blowing, right? I mean, it was just so big, and it was an experience I didn't forget my first year at SEMA and the people I met. And that's what really threw me into the field and going like, wow, there's some really great people involved with this, and there's some really great things you can do. And it's not just from the automotive standpoint, but more of a family standpoint, I think, and getting people involved with that. So, I mean, I would love to see more of that. And I always thought it would be fantastic if, I don't know if they have this or not, I didn't do my homework, but if maybe SEMA got involved and did what was called a SEMA Youth Day, where maybe they took the top 3 to 5 students at each high school, maybe 100 high schools, and let them roam the grounds of SEMA for the first time and get them interested and maybe spark something there. So, you know, that can be, the whole tradition can be passed along. So that sort of thing.
Excellent.
Yeah, the way I see the future of enthusiasm and hot rodding is like I think it all, there seems to be like a, pardon me if I'm not expressing this correctly, but like there's like a 3-decade long trail behind every generation of cars, right? The people who were younger when they saw them, they get to either buy and restore old ones 3 decades later. And as a person that owns an 87 Mercury Cougar and a 92 Buick, the thing about owning them that's very interesting is that, well, they always take a little bit of work. You have to find the weird part and this and that, but you also don't see them on the road, so they get a lot of attention. And so I guess my point is that, whenever this change to going fully EV, both in, from new car sales and hot rodding, is going to trail, 10, 15 years behind it as those cars become used and more economical to buy, and therefore hot rod and this and that. And I think we'll just see people doing the changeover. When I was a kid, the Mustang went fuel injected, and everybody said it was the end of the Mustang in terms of performance. I won't be able to work on this, my grandfather said, and now everybody on YouTube who is building these amazing cars, they have a laptop, they have HP tuners, and they're out there updating the math tables and like setting spark this and that, and like doing all sorts of amazing things. And I think that we're just going to see, as EVs become, as GM introduces, their Connect and Cruise EV system, as the Mach-E comes out, like in 10 years, there's going to be a kid who's going to have to learn how to deal with high voltage, and there's already YouTubers doing it. Like Rich Rebuilds and so forth. He's rebuilt a bunch of Teslas, but has kind of stopped doing that because Tesla keeps locking him out of having features from his, and Sam Crack and those guys that just rebuild. So there's going to be, those guys will be the pioneers of putting Tesla equipment, Ford equipment, GM equipment into other cars, classic cars, and this and that. And so I really have high hopes for it. Perhaps the demographics are shifting just because America has become less of a car culture overall because of Ubering and digital communications and those types of things. But for the people that do stick around, I think it's going to be really, really exciting times, but perhaps more dangerous just because of the high voltage nature.
Yes.
There's going to be a few like, hairdos done Frankenstein style.
Yeah, Mike, you had said it earlier, and you said it's going to be an evolution. People are going to adapt to that next level of vehicle, and how do I make it my own, or how do I innovate to make it more exciting? And even outside of the performance realm, just pure performance, the ability in the vehicles with all the connected services and gaming experiences, you're going to create environments in your vehicle that, and Pouria had mentioned, it's a different lifestyle potentially than just being on the, this main street on Friday night and doing little drags with everybody. The whole experience is changing with, I think, the younger set. And we obviously do a lot of research on this relative to what makes them tick. So it may not be, Jim, unfortunately, someone who wants to get their hands greasy anymore. It could be somebody clearly on that laptop that wants to modify certain elements of the vehicle, both performance, dynamics, even gaming and how the HMI works. Let alone all the ability that's coming and yet to be done relative to off-road and overlanding. I mean, there's just going to be, I just can't wait to see how the aftermarket innovates with these new technologies. They will find a way.
Tommy, before, sorry, Pouria, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I can speak, I guess, as a younger person on the panel.
I'm calling us old, Pouria. Yeah, exactly.
You will be here soon, Pouria.
We're talking about the perspective of millennials and Gen Z generations, and I think part of it is that, I mean, I'm not Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but I think for Gen Z, what I notice is that part of it is, like Todd said, is the interaction that they get now from so many other sources digitally. And so it's not as commonplace for them to be chasing their dad around the car project or something like that. The other thing, I think, this is my personal opinion, I don't know if it's statistically true, but I think the car industry has gotten kind of boring. And I don't fault the manufacturers necessarily, more so the regulations, whether it's crash regulations, safety regulations, emissions regulations. It just has streamlined cars so much to the point where nothing really has any distinct personality other than a Bronco or a Jeep or like a Camaro or Corvette or novelty products, basically. So everything looks the same. Like you look at a Corvette, I'm sorry, you look at a Accord and a Camry, it looks the same, more or less. So yeah, I think, yeah, I guess I think the point that Todd made was really interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of that, and that would be the excitement factor, I think, going forward in the future of the industry and getting the youth interested.
All right, Tommy, you're up.
I think that we're definitely going to see a divide happen with the future, where you do have large swath of the segment who, because of autonomy and hitting that lofty goal of level 5 of just full autonomy, we'll probably see a good chunk of people that have no interest in driving and may never have a driver's license. I mean, this could be a time where people buy a car only to have their own personal Uber or Lyft, something where, you know, I can get dropped off or I can summon my car to just take me where I need to go by myself, and that's it. But you will have, I think you will always have that segment of enthusiasts who want to drive, who will tinker with their car, who will spend time with it. And for them, a car is more than just a utilitarian device. It is an extension of their own personal self, where they can, you know, modify and change things to reflect what they believe in, whether that be extended mileage through addition of batteries, or, you know, higher performance, or whatever it may be. And I think with keeping that interest is just being more fluid and changing with the times. And yeah, in like now you've had, and in the past you've had people buying tools, you know, like, oh, I got my Harbor Freight, and I got my, you know, it's that evolution of buying, you know, crappy eBay parts, and, you know, and my first toolkit set to start changing my car. And now you'll see kids with maybe rubber boots and you know, mittens so they don't get electrocuted in the garage. But, you know, it's going to continue. You know, people are going to, you know, peel off those panels, and, you know, the whole curiosity, how does my car work? How can I make it better? How can I, you know, even if it's just changing the wheels, you know, this wheel 18 versus 19 inch to give me better mileage from my range. You know, but I think you will always see those people that, you know, they want to stand out, they want to be different. And as even with design, as everything is becoming sort of homogenous, and this sort of non-grill, because you don't need one for EVs, sort of look, people still looking for some sort of way to stand out from other people, and just fostering that and being there for them and saying, yes, it's okay to be different. It's okay to, you know, if you want to put stripes on your car and, you know, underglow, God help you, but sure, go crazy. But, you know, just being there for those people, and just celebrating that uniqueness, I think is going to be really fun to watch how that changes along with how tech changes and design changes.
I agree, Tommy. And you actually, it just inspired my last question. So we can wrap things up here very quickly. I guess the last thing I wanted to talk about then is range. Like right now, like batteries are, like the motors are really efficient and fast and amazing, but battery technology is going to be the heart of the future. You know, how quickly things charge, their size and weight, how much volume they're taking up, and then of course the range itself, since range anxiety is such a big thing. You know, right now, if you want to drive across country, you certainly can, but you have to plan out, you know, hour-long stops, 45 minutes at hour-long stops, and, you know, which can add, you know, a half day or a full day to a cross-country road trip if you're doing such a thing. Obviously, the charging station networks will grow and evolve, and that won't really be a problem. You won't have to go on specific routes, but where do you guys see, how quickly do you think we would be able to, you know, double our range and battery capabilities? Might be a good way to phrase it. If Todd can't answer, I understand. But Todd, we'll throw it to you first.
I mean, you can plot out the range yourself, right? And you'll see the trends, and it's not going to be flat line, that's for sure. The tech is changing so rapidly. Doubling, I really can't say, but you're seeing percent improvements every year. So the tech is just going to get even better, smaller. Because you talk about the battery packs now, they're big, and trying to put that into a frame that would generate a low to the ground sports car, it's hard to do because it requires height. And so the size needs to come down, which then of course goes against range. So you want them bigger, but those problems are being solved what seems like every day. So obviously as a manufacturer, we look at the tech and how it's progressing with the supply base and where the trends are going. And then we have our own requirements and we give them targets to meet. Then we got to do everything else on the vehicle side to help the range. So the battery clearly is a big component, but then you got everything else with rolling resistance on tires and aerodynamics, all that stuff, weight. So that continues to be something that we continue to work on. But doubling, I can't really say.
Gotcha. Pouria?
I just also wanted to add another factor to all the, as far as weight, range, and everything. I think what's more important, well, not more important, but it's important to add also in the spirit of being environmentally friendly, is how we recycle these batteries, and I think that's going to be a big factor in the future as well. But I think as far as doubling the range that we have now, like Todd said, it's going to depend on the leaps and bounds that we make in the technology in the next 4 or 5 years, but I don't see it taking that long. I think with the aggressive investments that people like Elon Musk are making into the development of more advanced batteries, I would venture to guess that in the next 5 to 10 years, we would be able to double our range. Again, that's not an educated guess, but that's just
Jim?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Pouria. I mean, if I had to make a guess as far as doubling, I would say it probably happen in the next 5 years. The other thing we have to look at is the availability of batteries, right? As more and more EVs enter the market, you know, what's our supply versus demand on these batteries? And, you know, the precious metals that are required to make these batteries. So we've got, there's a whole formula, right, to put an EV car together or an EV vehicle together. And, you know, are we going to be able to meet that demand? There's a lot of little different things that come into play. But as far as, you know, and again, this is, I'm with Pouria. I mean, this is totally not an educated guess, but I would say we could probably double our range at the rate we're going now within the next 5 years.
Excellent. Tommy?
I think in possibly even the next 3 years, we may see a big jump in batteries. I mean, just at the beginning of this year, Tesla spent over, I think, $200 million to buy battery company Maxwell, which with their dry electrode technology could boost their ranges from, I think they're at about 353 for their Model S, which is the highest range possible right now, to well over 500 miles of range, which I mean would completely eradicate range anxiety, because that's putting it on hybrid like Prius levels of insanity. So I really believe, like Todd was saying, you know, things are moving so fast and changing so rapidly, and the really amazing thing when you move into electric cars and that segment that Tesla started with is turning your car basically into a cell phone, where you can have these over-the-air updates. Where, I mean, how amazing is it to walk out to your car, turn it on, and like, oh, hey, I auto updated overnight. Now you have another 20 miles of range, you know. And it's these type of improvements that I think are really going to spark a lot of change, not only in how people see EVs, but in how people live their life. Because with EVs, you took out a massive chunk of parts that people worry about. There's no more engine. There are, you know, you've gotten rid of the transmission, and now you just have a battery and drive motors, and you really only need to change your brakes, your tires, and maybe some other part. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more people on the road after we have this proliferation of charging stations. A lot more people taking road trips, a lot more people just out and about, because they don't have to worry about those things anymore. And the range anxiety will be a thing of the past, and we'll start to see a renaissance of driving again, like we did with Highway 66, of people just getting out, enjoying not only brighter skies because of you know, this all these EVs, but also just like the joy of driving and seeing the country and just enjoying what we have. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I want to do some road trips too.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, one of the things that, because you know, I'm a performance enthusiast at heart. I love going fast. By the way, I love doing it with my family too. You know, we've been thinking about getting you know, a Ford truck or a Raptor, you know, or that's why I got my station wagon and hope to hot rod it with Jim and his team's help, you know, just to make it a family experience. But the thing that I learned earlier this year is that Los Angeles shut down, and we had, what would you guys say, like 6-8 weeks of the cleanest air I've seen in 20 years. And obviously it's much cleaner than it was then. You know, when I first moved out here, my bosses at the time, they had grown up here in the 70s during the smog days where you couldn't go outside. So it's obviously much better. All the emission standards have been really helping, but to remove all the cars instantly from Los Angeles was mind-opening. Like the skies were bluer, the clouds were amazing. You could see the stars again. Like, so to live in that future would just be an amazing thing in the next, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. I really look forward to it. But anybody else have anything to add? Any questions? Otherwise, we can close it out here. I've already spent too much of your time, and thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Yeah.
Just a thank you to all of you for your participation, your thoughts, for really sharing your expertise with us. I think it's a really good vision into the future. And obviously there are a lot of things that we still could talk about, and like hopefully we will in the future. It's been really fun to get people together and discuss this. But it, you know, it was a real pleasure to talk to you guys about what this industry that we really do love passionately could look like, and to see that there still is a place for the enthusiast in it, right? And to share that positivity and that forward facing look. So thank you guys so much. All right, wrap it up, Michael.
That's all, folks. No, I probably can't say that. Copyright. Anyway, so no, just thank you to Andreanna, Todd, Pouria, Jim, and Tommy for joining me today. I'm Michael for the Internet Brands Auto Group. You'll most likely see me over on Corvette Forum and Ford Truck Enthusiast, among a few other places. Thank you so much for watching, and have a fantastic day. We'll see you on the next one.